So I'm going to give you some tips for developing this inquiry question. So if you're thinking about that model, the model conversation we looked at using the violent video games in teens, the one we just looked at, what don't you think about when you're looking at like that conversation is in the middle, there was the actual topic of conversation, the violent video games. That's what we're doing right now in unit 1, just trying to figure out what the topic of conversation is going to be. In the next unit, when we're working on the annotated bibliography, your goal will be to try to research and establish and hear out all of the voices, the scholars, the professionals, the people with personal experience, all the different kinds of texts that are out there, sharing these opinions and data and everything, and hear out the whole conversation and try to become as much of an expert as possible in just what is being said. The digital essay is where you will try to take a seat at the table and contribute something. You've heard everybody out. You said, hey guys, what are you talking about? And you've heard everybody. Is to then analyze and evaluate and talk about and say something, to speak into the conversation and add something to keep it going. So first, we're going to look at we're going to do a couple of things to try to get this topic together. Good inquiry doesn't just happen out of thin air or in a vacuum. Topics do that. I could say pick a topic and you might say education or medicine or healthcare or immigration. But that doesn't necessarily in and of itself imply a problem or a debate or something that needs to be solved. You want to get down to where you have an issue. Like if I said education, that's a topic. Standardized testing, now there's a debate. That's something to talk about. And these things are usually framed by conversations. And real inquiry typically begins with some kind of a source or several sources that really help you establish and clarify a direction to go into. Because one of the big things about choosing an inquiry question is you need to be able to say what it is you're trying to figure out about this issue. And it's really hard to do that if you don't know anything. So there typically is some reading and discussion that even has to happen first. And the ideas we pull out can often be vague, but text really help you clarify things. And of course it stems from genuine curiosity. You want to pick something you really won't be painful for the next couple of weeks. I'm going to give you some tips now on picking an LOI, not a topic, and kind of how to narrow it in. So the first thing is just think about how topics, issues, and what I'll call lines of inquiry or your inquiry questions are different. One, topics are just used to, group issues together, like healthcare, medicine, education. And again, these don't necessarily imply a conversation or a debate or a problem in and of themselves. That's when you narrow it down to issues. There are lots of things like healthcare is kind of more of a topic. You could think of a lot of issues happening right now in the debate over healthcare. Your inquiry and what you pick describes what you want to understand or find out about that issue. So I'm going to give an example that goes from general topic to specific topic or issue to your actual focus, interest, question. So education is a topic. Standardized testing, that's an issue. Thinking about how standardized testing impacts learning, that's a focus, that's a direction, that's something you're trying to figure out. So here are some things you want to think about when you're choosing what I'll sometimes call your LOI, your line of inquiry or your inquiry question. Is it answerable through research? It's not philosophical or values or preference based, which religion is better. Again, it's based on everybody's personal values. You're not going to be able to find concrete research on that. Why do people prefer a certain type of music? Because they like it. Now I'm not saying you can't do inquiry questions or lines of inquiry about religion. I've had lots of really successful projects on religion, but when you start getting into comparisons, it really is about people's values. Can you explain why the issue matters? So you should be able to say, and that's part of what makes it current, being able to say why this matters now, why this is worth looking into. kind of that, why should I care kind of a thing. Is it debatable or complex enough? You don't want something that's a fact hunt, or something that's oversimplified or dualistic. So you want to stay away from like yes or no questions or for or against or right or wrong. Like should people do this? That's a yes or no. There's not very much. There's not. It does. That's going to set you up to have that. Like I guess oversimplified is the best way to say, or that superficial look when we were talking about looking at that whole conversation and hearing all those voices out. Like if I looked at the standardized testing example, if I said, does standardized testing impact learning? That kind of sets me up for a yes or no. But if I worded it, how does standardized testing impact learning? That opens up the whole gambit. You want something that is going to be very open and inclusive of a lot of different things, because that's actually going to set up your mindset a little bit better to have a little bit less bias. And you want to make sure it's, again, current and relevant. So it's not something that you're going to bore people with. It's something that's old. And can you say something new about it? So some of the topics that are on the list are things like, like abortion and, legalizing marijuana and global warming. Like these are things that, again, they're over talked about and over researched, and there's not new stuff coming out to match how often they're talked about. So if you Googled it, you get 50,000 results and they'd almost all say the same thing. You want to stay away from topics like that. Is it limited and clear enough? So something that might be vague or too big, like, what is beauty? What is beauty? Like, we're talking about like physical beauty, like cultural standards of beauty here? What are we talking about? Like inner beauty? Like what's happening? A topic that might be too big is like, what's wrong with the public education system? Whew, there's so much going on with that question. One, get ready for a long semester, because that's too much. You'd have to like narrow that in. Two, you're also assuming there is things wrong with the education system, but you don't want to word your question in a way that's going to set you up to be biased from the beginning. What's wrong with the public education system, or what's wrong with our current healthcare system? That wording already sets me up to assume that there's something wrong. It already sets me up to go in a certain way or make certain assumptions. So you want to keep opinions out of the question. Why do people get tattoos? I can answer that question for you. Wait for it. They want one. That's it. They have a personal or a cultural value, and it's different for everybody, and you'd have to do like a whole global history of tattoos all over the world, and like nobody wants to read it. And then that's the end. So there's a couple of tips just to get you started. Make it something you want to do. Make it something that's simplified and current and interesting and unique. Pay attention to your wording. Make sure it's clear. Make sure it's not opinionated. It's not like yes or no and like oversimplified. And again, like you might not start there. You might just start with like your topic or something you want to word. And the wording takes some time and some reading. But these are just some tips to just be thinking about it as you're working on your wording and you're getting started and you're picking some stuff.